One moment she is a woman full of charm, and the next, she turns into a terrifying vampire, biting through a man's jugular vein in a single breath. Blood splatters instantly across the scene, and afterward, the woman does not forget to lick her lips. With the appearance of this vampire, the small town where the man lives is about to face an unprecedented crisis. The story takes place in America before 1933. At that time, the United States had enacted prohibition, which, as the name suggests, banned the sale and brewing of alcoholic beverages in all places. Of course, as the old saying goes, where there is a policy above, there is a countermeasure below. For some alcoholics, not being able to drink was simply a death sentence. In this environment, local gang organizations began to secretly brew and sell alcohol. To avoid being caught by the police, they bribed them in advance to act as their protection umbrella. Our male protagonist, James, is one of them. He is a heavy drinker himself, so he cannot survive without alcohol. Tonight, after finishing his shift, James takes a few subordinates to a suburban villa. This is a small brothel. Besides providing women, it also has a large amount of moonshine. James and the madam here, Mary, were once a couple, and that night, the group was having a great time. At the same time, a group of uninvited guests arrives in town. The leader is named Old Black, Cherokee. This man is jealous of the local alcohol business and wants a piece of the pie. Thus, Old Black leads his henchmen into an underground bar, threatening the owner to hand it over. The owner refused to the death, and as a result, the brutal Old Black cut off his 10 fingers and stabbed him to death. Just like that, Old Black forcibly took over the bar business. One day, a strange customer arrives at Mary's villa. This man is well-spoken and carries himself with dignity. He looks refined, like a gentleman. Mary sends a girl named Xiaomei to entertain him. To Xiaomei's surprise, the man doesn't drink hard liquor but specifically asks for red wine. This makes Xiaomei look at him in a new light. However, what she did not expect was that this man was actually a vampire. That night, Xiaomei was bitten and became one of his kind. Mary was still completely unaware of this. At this time, she was overwhelmed with the affairs of her daughter, Julianne. Julianne had fallen in love with a waiter at the bar named John. Mary disapproved, and mother and daughter often had heated arguments over this. But Julianne was very stubborn. She ignored her mother's warnings and often went to date John. One day, James receives a police call stating that a female corpse has appeared in the suburban jungle. He hurries there with his team and finds the victim covered in scratches, with the blood inside her body drained. The moment James sees the deceased, a flood of bad memories rushes into his mind, memories we will explain later. Soon, the identity of the deceased is confirmed. She is the daughter of a nearby hunter who went missing a few days ago, only to reappear in this state. Just then, a priest suddenly appears at the crime scene, constantly muttering that vampires have appeared in the town and that if they are not eliminated in time, the entire town will fall. After speaking, he began reciting the Bible. All the police officers present thought the priest was crazy and tried to drive him away, but he refused to leave. With no other choice, they temporarily arrested him and locked him up at the station. Back at the station, James is called into a meeting room by his superior. The boss learned that the local bar had changed owners, and not only that, but the new guy didn't know to take the initiative to pay tribute. So, he sends James to target him. That night, James goes to the bar to talk to the owner. To hide his identity, Old Black has his subordinate, Victor, act as the boss. James sees through the trick at a glance. Staring at Old Black's head, James says, "Don't think that by finding a double, I won't know you are the real boss." James warns Old Black that if he wants to continue the alcohol business in town, he must pay taxes, or else he will face the consequences. After James finishes speaking, Victor takes a thick stack of money from a drawer and hands it to James's men. Only then does James leave satisfied. Earning money had been too easy before, but James's behavior caught Old Black's attention, and a murderous intent rose in his heart. However, Old Black didn't know that James's investigation of him hadn't stopped. The conversation at the bar made James feel that Old Black was hiding some secret. As they leave the bar, they happen to encounter John, who is taking out the trash. James knows him and tries to get information about the source of Old Black's liquor. John is just a lowly waiter who only cares about clearing tables and taking out trash. He knows nothing of other matters. James's subordinate, Xiao Bai, thinks John isn't being honest and lands a heavy punch. Sure enough, after the punch, John becomes honest and tells everything he knows, which is that he actually doesn't know the source of the liquor. However, once while John was taking Julianne home, they happened to see them transporting goods. James then asks for the location of that road and sets up a checkpoint that night, while he hides nearby with a sniper rifle to observe. Soon, old black subordinate, the man in the suit, drives a truck from a distance. He is a bit confused. These cops really have no sense of honor. They were paid, yet they still pull this highway interception stunt. The two sides clash, and a fierce gunfight breaks out. James, hiding in the dark, notices a survivor trying to run. Without a word, a headshot sends him to his lunch box, death. He wants to fire again to help but finds his gun jammed. Helpless, he has to take his pistol and go down to assist. Unexpectedly, he hits a tree branch on the way and faints on the spot. Fortunately, the man in the suit and his men were outnumbered and was shot dead by the police. Afterward, James's men go to check the cargo, only to find that what the man in the suit was transporting wasn't red wine, but a batch of fresh blood. Everyone was stunned. Before they could figure out what was happening, the man in the suit and the others, who had been shot, instantly crawled up from the ground, bearing vampire fangs, and bit everyone present to death. It wasn't until the next day that James was rescued by a passing hunter and sent to Mary's place. Soon, the chief of police hears the news and arrives. The awakened James reports the situation truthfully, only to learn from the chief that all the subordinates he took with him have disappeared. At this time, James mistakenly believes he was betrayed by John. To find the bodies of the policemen, the chief personally leads officers to the bar, smashing the place while taking Victor back for interrogation. Victor is very stubborn and reveals nothing. Meanwhile, John realizes things are going south and prepares to flee. But he wants to take Julianne with him. John finds her and expresses his plan to elope. Julianne, a foolish girl blinded by love, actually agrees. To have enough money to start a new life, John takes Julianne back to the bar. He knows where Victor hides the money. Unexpectedly, as soon as John arrives at the office, he encounters the returning Old Black and his men. After learning what happened at the bar, Old Black captures Julianne and threatens John to work for him and go to the police station to rescue Victor. Only by rescuing Victor will Julianne have a chance to live. To save his beloved, John has no choice but to agree. At the same time, seeing James's unstable mood, Mary sends him home to rest. At home, James digs out photos from his time in the army, and that terrifying memory floods his mind again. As the movie progresses, James's memory emerges completely. Over 20 years ago, James was still fighting bloodily on the battlefield. Sometimes, the two sides would negotiate a truce. During these times, both sides would send medics to the front lines to bring back the dead and wounded. James was on guard duty when he saw a hair-raising scene. The doctor sent by the opposing side was actually a vampire, who immediately began sucking the blood of a wounded soldier. Terrified, James pulled the trigger, hitting the opponent right in the forehead. It was precisely because of this shot that it drew enemy retaliation. Countless missiles whistled down on James's position. Many soldiers couldn't hide in time and died in the artillery fire. The experience of seeing a vampire, combined with the guilt of causing his teammates' deaths, caused James to suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which sometimes leads to memory gaps. Back to John. In order to enter the police station to save Victor, he goes to James's house, holds him at gunpoint, and makes him lead the way to the station, while explaining to James that he did not betray him. Meanwhile, the chief is leading several subordinates for recreation at Mary's place. One of them is seduced by Xiao Mei and goes upstairs with her. On the way, Xiao Mei reveals her true face and bites him to death. The others hear the noise and rush upstairs. Seeing the bloody scene, they immediately fire their guns, but Xiao Mei dodges them easily. Just then, the man in the suit and others arrive. In the crowd, we see the gentleman who infected Xiao Mei. It turns out the gentleman is Old Black's subordinate. Their mission is to kill the chief. They quickly gun down the chief and his men. Mary, seeing things are going wrong, runs back to the bedroom to get a gun, but by the time she returns, The man in the suit and his group have already left. John, holding James hostage, successfully enters the police station and takes Victor away. Before leaving, John tells James about Julianne. On the way back to the bar, John questions Victor about who Old Black and his people really are. Since things have reached this point, Victor frankly states that they are a group of vampires, gods who rule the dark world. Back at the bar, John finds that Old Black and the others are gone. He asks Victor if he knows their whereabouts. Victor says, "They are nearby." Ben suddenly pulls out a gun from nowhere, wounds John, and flees the scene with the money from the office. By now, he no longer wants to be Old Black's puppet. James picks up his weapons and equipment, intending to find the chief to explain the situation, only to find out about the chief's death. James arrives at the crime scene to comfort the terrified Mary, who tells him about the vampires she saw. Combining this with the current situation, James is certain that Old Black and those people are a group of vampires. Just then, John drags his wounded legs and drives to Mary's villa, telling them everything and hoping James can follow him to rescue Julianne. James originally didn't want to go, so the director forcibly labeled him a father. It turns out Julianne is James's daughter. When Mary broke up with him years ago, she was already pregnant with Julianne. Now, James has no choice but to save her. Since the opponents are vampires, the guns in their hands have become scrap metal. At this moment, James remembers the imprisoned priest and runs to the station to release him. The priest lives up to expectations, bringing along the vampire's nemesis, wooden stakes, and silver crosses, and they head to the bar to find Old Black. Just as they enter the bar door, they encounter several vampires, and a great battle begins. This time, James has found their weakness, choosing the right moment to drive a wooden stake into a vampire's heart. The opponent vanishes instantly. Suddenly, a female vampire appears and rushes toward the priest. A bottle of alcohol knocks her down, followed by a wooden stake driven into the priest's own chest to send him a lunch box. Try to kill him. The priest endured the sharp pain and launched a counterattack, splashing holy water while plunging a stake into her heart, sending the vampire to her death. Ultimately, the priest died from excessive blood loss, but the battle was not over. The man in the suit jumped out from nowhere again. James engages in a fierce struggle with him, and after an intense fight, finally manages to eliminate him. Next, only Old Black remains. Later, by chance, the two open a hidden door in the office and walk in to see a shocking scene. Many men and women are lying there having their blood drawn, and Julianne is among them. John quickly steps forward to get her down. Just as they are preparing to leave, Old Black appears to block them, pushing the two onto a sofa. At the critical moment, James attacks from behind, using a silver cross necklace to choke Old Black's neck. Old Black reacts quickly, breaking free with an elbow strike and knocking James away with a punch. Then a dramatic scene occurs. Old Black transforms into countless bats. Whether he is about to unleash a big move, or prepare to escape, I don't know. Seeing this, James grabs the cross necklace on the table, and waves it wildly at the swarm of bats. Unexpectedly, he heavily wounds Old Black and drives him away. As the sun rises, this conflict temporarily comes to a close. In the end, only Old Black remains alive from his vampire army, and the story ends here. The film title is Blood Runners, a crime thriller released in 2017. The plot is relatively simple and the setting is not new, but fortunately, the thriller atmosphere is well created, and the action scenes are all decent. Friends who like it can watch the original film.